I was sorry that I couldn't be here, 2 weeks ago? About right?
Yep.
And I think, how lucky that there's 5 Sundays this month. And I get to sneak back down. That worked really, really, really well. I'm going to see if this is just going to keep sliding. Move it back a little more so it doesn't slide. I love things that slide sometimes. I thought of this song because while I wasn't away from you and while I am away from you, I'm always encouraged because I can pray for you. And when I talked to Danny, he mentioned that you might pray for me too. All around this world I've traveled, and through it all I've come to find ties that bind can come unravel. I've had to face some lonely times, but when I'm tired and feeling low, oh, what a comfort it is to know across the miles there's someone praying for me. Across the miles there's someone on their knees, lifting my name to the Lord above. In joy and pain I can feel the love and see your smile across the miles. Life can be so complicated, walking through it on your own. When kindred hearts get separated, oh, it gives love a chance to grow. And even though I'm so far away, oh, I'm reminded every day. Across the miles there's someone praying for me. Across the miles there's someone on their knees, lifting my name to the Lord above. In joy and pain I am glad to be back. And I love the scripture we're going to read. And I don't know how often any of you wallow around in Proverbs. Go there. It is so much fun. You can just open it, pick and choose. It's a great book to read. So I'm going to read this, and you're invited to read along. I just love because Babs gets here early and has the scripture open to it, and I'm just moving things around here. But we're in the 3rd chapter of Proverbs, and I'm going to start at about verse 13, which I am sure I can find. In fact, here it is. And I wanted to read the whole chapter, but I'm being good to you, and I'll let you do that on your own. So we're going to start at verse 13 and go through about 18. Happy are those who find wisdom, and those who get understanding. I love this. Her income, wisdom, that's the her. Her income is better than silver, and her revenue better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all of her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her, and those who hold her fast are called happy. Wisdom. I could just sit right there and stop, but you know I won't. I'll keep going. I love wisdom and change. They are inseparable. Let me just tell you that. You've already brought that up today. This is the 4th Sunday Lent? I think so. We're somewhere in the middle of Lent, going on the other side of Lent. And you know, and I'm sure you've been reminded, but you know, Lent is a special season when we focus a lot of times on simple living. We're more prayerful during the season of Lent. We don't do it so much now, but historically there's always been a lot of fasting during the season of Lent. All of these things and others are to help us become closer to God, because we understand we're going through this journey again with Christ. It's a hard journey. And maybe we understand this journey far too well because we have such hardness in our own lives. So it's a 40-day journey. I always find it interesting. You know what we're going towards? We're going towards an empty tomb. How often do you take a journey when you're looking for something that's empty? Mm-hmm. Preparing ourselves, right, for a celebration, the Easter celebration. So I guess I just wanted to ask, are you all doing anything special for Lent? Did you give up something? Yeah? Did you give something? I was like, let's see, the people who give up chocolate for Lent. That seems like a regular. What? Chocolate? Really? For me, it'd be coconut. I like the opposite idea that came around a few years back, where instead of giving something up, you give something extra. Another focus. You know, it's not about the activity itself. It's about what helps you grow. And sometimes we grow through giving. Sometimes we grow through giving up. There was an Irishman, and this will very quickly, you will recognize this as a story from Ireland. This Irishman moved into this tiny hamlet in County Kerry, and he walks into the pub, which is what Irishmen do. I see some people nodding. And he promptly orders 3 beers. Mm-hmm. And the bartender kind of raises his brows. Not very often does someone walk in and order 3 beers, but he serves the man his 3 beers, which the man drinks quietly, sitting at his table alone. An hour later, the man has finished his 3 beers, and he orders 3 more. He was quite a man. There might be under the table at this point. And it happens again. 3 beers. Well, the fellow leaves, and then the next evening he returns to the pub, and again he drinks 3 beers at a time. Every time he orders 3 beers, and he drinks 3 beers at a time. So pretty soon, you know how small towns are, and especially in a pub where people tend to know each other, kind of compare a pub to church. It's kind of that kind of, you get to be good friends, right? And they're talking about the man who drinks 3 beers. So finally, a week later, I guess the bartender now feels like he knows the fellow well enough to ask him, can you kind of, I don't mean to pry, but we're kind of wondering why you always order 3 beers. He says, "'Tis odd, isn't it?" And you see, but I can explain this for you. I have 2 brothers. One went to America and the other went to Australia. And we're very close brothers. So we promised each other that we would always order 2 extra beers whenever we drank as a way of keeping the family bond. Well, the bartender and the whole town kind of thought that was special. And he kind of became a celebrity because they liked this idea of the family bond. And it was kind of funny. People would come out just to watch him order 3 beers and drink. Well, then it happened. One day he came in and he only ordered 2 beers. He didn't say anything. But the bartender poured 2 beers, and the bartender had kind of a heavy heart. And it continued for the rest of the evening, not 3 beers, but 2 beers. And the word was getting around town, and everyone became very concerned. And very soon, prayers were being offered up, right, for the soul of one of the brothers. Well, the next day, the bartender finally says to the man, he says, "Sir, folks around here, well, and me first of all," he says, "we just want to offer our condolences for the death of your brother. 2 beers and all." The man looks at him and he thinks for a moment, and then he says, "Well, you'll be happy to hear my 2 brothers are alive and well. It's just that I, myself, have decided to give up drinking for Lent." You were wondering where I was going with that. What's she telling? Lent. A time for change. Maybe a time for reflection. Huh? Do you ever feel that during this season? That need for change, for something different? If there's one thing that I've identified over the years of being a pastor, it's that desire, that searching for meaning and truth. And we seek wisdom, right? We seek wisdom for ourselves. And we seek wisdom to share. We seek wisdom for our children. I used to hear it more than I do now. Parents and grandparents reminding their children, and I want you to help me. I'll start. Cleanliness is next to
godliness.
If you can't say something nice,
don't say anything at all.
We're such great parents. You can lead a horse to water.
Can't make it dirty.
A penny saved.
The penny earned.
Don't cry over
Spilled milk.
Waste not.
One mile.
I love this. Clean your plate. Think of all the in your country. Beggars can't be
Choosers.
Curiosity.
Kill the cat.
But satisfaction
Guaranteed.
brought it back.
Oh.
That's all the time. I know who started that one. Do you think money grows
On trees.
a place for everything?
Everything in its place.
Sticks and stones will break my bones.
Words will never hurt me.
Early bird,
Gets the worm.
where there's smoke.
There's fire.
Did you think you were born
Yesterday.
where?
No, you think you were poor.
In a barn?
Yes.
Sorry, that's a little harder. Here's one. If someone told you to go jump off a cliff, would you do it? Beauty is in the eye.
Of the beholder.
And here's my favorite, and I'll say the whole thing all by myself. Wait till your father gets home. Simple phrases. What's interesting about those phrases is that you all know them. Do your children know them? And your grandchildren? What's interesting is there have been some studies, and there are many, many more sayings. And these sayings do help us pass on values and truths and encouragement. But we're losing them. They're not being passed on as they were. But we do the same thing with Scripture, don't we? The Lord is my shepherd.
I shall not want.
Our Father,
Who art in heaven.
for God so loved the world.
He gave his only begotten Son.
How much Scripture do we know more? It's interesting to me, it's my little personal aside, with the number of translations out with the Bibles, it's harder for us to say Scripture together because the words are different depending on what translation. It was easier when we all used the same text. And I can tell you when I was in seminary when the latest version of the Revised Standard Version, the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible came out, and boy, did that trip me up because we had to quote Scripture. And I'd go, oh gosh, is that the old version or the new version? But Scripture, and I'm not looking for accuracy here, but those words come to us in times of trouble. And it's so important that we hear those words and we remind each other of those words as well as these things. So we have seeds, right, that have been planted in our minds and in our hearts to help guide us, really, to help guide us through life, especially when life is hard, or when we're not sure which way to turn, right, or when we're simply seeking wisdom. Sometimes I think that that journey is reflected, especially in our Lenten journey, because the Lenten journey is a tough journey. It is a time to pay attention to seeking a life rich with wisdom, with being intentional about our relationship with God, with Christ, about repairing those places that we know are broken. I know you've had this experience driving through Atlanta on the interstate, and traffic will back up, and you think, oh, what's happened? And you come up, and you don't see a wreck, but you see a truck. A State Farm truck. Have you seen that? And they're evaluating an accident that has taken place, or an intersection, or something, and you know, they do this. They go around and they rate certain areas, whether or not it's accident-prone, safety. They look at roadways and intersections to determine which ones are the most dangerous. And I can think of a couple just off the top of my head that I think qualify. But it made me think, you know, sometimes it feels like we're just driving down that road of life, and we're coming into those dangerous intersections of our lives. And sometimes we call those kinds of intersections forks in the road. That choices in front of us. And so there are those moments where a choice we make or don't make sets us on a course that will influence the rest of our journey, right?
Yes.
Just, do we stop or go? Do we turn right or left? Actually, that's right or left, but right. Do we go forward or do we turn back? Sometimes we forget that's an option. I had that experience, that change hit me this morning. I don't know where I am. I need to tell you all that. I know sort of where Fayetteville is, but I have a GPS and I don't have to know where I am. It just says turn here, turn there, and I do what it says. Mm-hmm. Well, from the very beginning today, it brought me a different way, and I thought, what in the world? I've never gone this way to this church. And I went back, make sure I wasn't going to Fayetteville, North Carolina, or something like that. and I'm going, and I'm driving, I'm going, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, I know what's happening, I know what it's doing. It's going to take me to that bridge, and I'm not going to be able to get across. Mm-hmm. How did that GPS know the bridge was open? Because I didn't. So, change, new direction. I got here. Oh, wow.
Bridge is open.
The bridge is open. I drove right across it because my heart was going, boom, boom, boom. I'm not that early today. How will I find my way? so you know, we kind of get that driving the road of life, right? Now, in fact, I heard this story about the Pope that he went to New York. I don't know if you've heard this. And, you know, as you can imagine, he's picked up by a limousine at the airport. And he's, I don't know, you know, sometimes you forget that how human popes are, right? Because we built them up. And he looked at the car and he said to the driver, and I find this amazing, he says, you know, I hardly ever get to drive. Would you please let me? New York City, the Pope wants to drive. Well, the driver, as you might imagine, is hesitant. He says, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm supposed to do that. And the Pope persists, oh, please, he said, please, I just, you know, not too long, just for a little while. And finally the driver gives up and says, all right, I mean, how can I say no to the Pope? That's a good question. Sure. So the Pope gets behind the wheel, and what no one knew until this point was the Pope, it seems, is a speed demon. And he hits the gas, and he's going 100 miles an hour in a 45-mile-per-hour speed zone. A policeman notices, pulls him over, and so this police officer walks up, and he asks the Pope to roll down the window. Except I don't think that's what we do anymore. We just push a button. And the officer is surprised, shocked, whatever, and he says to the Pope, sir, could you just wait just a moment? And he goes back to his patrol car and he radios back and asks to speak to the chief, and he says, Chief, I have a problem. And chief says, what kind of problem? Well, I pulled over this guy for driving way over the speed limit, but it's somebody really important. And chief says, important like the mayor? No, much more important than the mayor. And he says, important like the governor? Way more important than that. Like the president? More. Who's more important than the president? Officer responds, I don't know, but he's got the Pope driving for him.
That's good.
We don't know what to expect in life, do we?
No, we don't.
And I lived in Austin, Texas. I had a dear friend, and she loved change. She embraced change. Now, I was her pastor, and I'd look at her and I'd say, I hate change. I hate it. And she'd laugh at me. I have come face to face with change. For quite a few months, some of you know, most of you probably don't, I've had 2 very severe allergic reactions. And I've gone through a lot of testing, nothing life-threatening, nothing like that, just but not good stuff. The first rash, after a myriad of tests and a long-lived rash, we never discovered the cause. And then the second rash came, and I had more tests and more tests, and the final result is, are you sitting down? Oh, yeah. I'm allergic, it seems.
To the tree grass.
You're closer. I'm allergic to dirt.
No.
I'm not kidding.
Good for a farmer.
I'm the only farmer I know who is allergic to dirt. The doctor is looking at my face and he's thinking that I was going to fall apart with this new information. And he looked at me in some amazement as I laughed. And he said, and I said to him, I said, well, I guess it's time to change careers. And he said, I thought you'd be upset. What will you do? Well, we talked for a little while, and I smiled as I told him, Doctor, I said, my brother and sister could have told you a long time ago that I was allergic to dirt. And he looked at me and smiled. So, unlike the last time that I saw you, change is coming. My organic farm is for sale. And I'm talking with others about a new path, a new career. And here on a quiet Sunday morning with sunshine, in the season of Lent, I'm seeking wisdom. Wisdom to make the right choices. Wisdom to pass on to my children and my grandchildren. Wisdom to understand what really is important in life and live in the moment and love and laugh. Wisdom. Do you seek wisdom? Proverbs, the book of wisdom. You know, we all know people who are smart, don't we? Or people who are pretty old or pretty rich. But sometimes those very people make some really foolish choices. See, wisdom is not intelligence. Wisdom is not age. Wisdom is not wealth. Wisdom involves the practical use of that knowledge to deal with life's issues. In our scripture today, I love it. I could just read the whole thing again. Wisdom is better than silver. Her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Each and every one of us, all of us, we have the capacity to be wise. I think most people are born with that desire to make wise or right choices in life. And often, I find it, you know where wisdom begins? It often begins with doubting, with questioning. And that's a healthy place for wisdom to begin, because when we begin to question, our journey towards answers begins. You know this journey, when you start asking for wisdom for our marriages, for wisdom for our children, for wisdom to help us in our work, for wisdom to help us with difficult relationships, for wisdom to minister to others, to care for others. Lord, I am not all that I can be. And I'm not all that I should be. But I desire nothing more than for you to be a lamp unto my feet and show me the right way. till you're there right beside me. Nothing will I fear as long as you are near. Please be near me to the end. My word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. I will not forget your love for me, and yet my heart forever is wandering. Jesus, be my guide, hold me to your side, and I will love you to the end. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And a light unto my path. You're the light unto my path.